is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback. Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball.
August 16th, 1976 is the issue with Calvin Hill on the cover as he returns to the NFL and the Washington Redskins. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Past Our Prime podcast, where we look back at what was going on in the world of sports from 50 years ago, according to Sports Illustrated. Bill Mahoney, Mark Hoffman, and I, Scott Johnston, do this every week. And this week, guys, our first NFL cover since Lynn Swann back in January. That must mean one thing. Football season is here. Mark, Calvin Hill, underrated star for your Cowboys on the cover.
Yep, I remember Calvin very well. The first football season I watched Dallas Cowboys from game one to the end of the season was 1969, his rookie year. I had watched 68, but sporadically. But in 69, I remember him coming out on the scene, and they went 11-2-1. He rushed for I think was 942 yards, and he was named, I think, the NFC's or NFL's Offensive Rookie of the Year. Great year. But then he had a lot of injuries. He had some good years after he got through some of the injuries, but that's what derailed his career so much. But the Cowboys had lost Don Perkins, who was actually their fullback, but he was their leading rusher, and he had retired. So they needed someone like Calvin to be a workhorse back, and they brought him in.
Bill, Calvin on the cover as he is heading to Washington.
Yep.
But he was never the featured back for this Redskins team for whatever reason.
No, but when you look at the cover, that's what you think. You think, oh, Calvin Hill's going to be the guy in Washington, but it wasn't. It was Mike Thomas, also known, his real name is Malcolm Thomas, but Mike Thomas was the guy. Mike Thomas was the NFL best rookie running back in 1975. He had close to 1,000 yards and 500 yards more as a catcher, as a pass catcher. But in 1976, he went off. It was his best year. He had 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, and also 4 receiving touchdowns. So Mike Thomas was the man in Washington, but you pretty much don't know anything about him.
No.
And didn't Calvin have to compete with John Riggins for backup duty?
That's that's a good point. Yeah, because Mike Thomas gets overshadowed later on, a couple years later, by Riggins.
Yeah, when I think of Riggins, I think of Redskins running backs.
Yeah, but I mean, Mike Thomas isn't even in there.
I mean, Riggins becomes this all-world back, but not till like 82, 83 when the Hogs get in there and start doing their thing. But yeah, all this attention on Hill and Riggins, and it's this guy named Thomas. And that's another thing. You mentioned Calvin Hill with 942 yards, Mark, and
Yep.
Bill, you said Thomas had like 1,100 yards. That's back when 1,000 yards was a true benchmark of a running back having a great season.
Well, you have to remember they had just increased the season from 12 to 14 games. So, but 14, now they play 17 games a year. I'm sure when they increased it from 12 to 14, everyone was like, oh my God, they're ruining the sport. There's too many games.
It just sort of stinks because Mike Thomas comes into Washington, has a number of good years, but he just sort of faded into obscurity.
Yep. So Calvin Hill's a free agent that signs with the Redskins. So does John Riggins. They had another guy that signed with them that year, a guy by the name of Gene Fugett. He was a tight end. He would go on to have a Pro Bowl season with the Redskins here in a couple years, I think 1977, after a few good years in Dallas. And Gene will be joining us in a little bit. Went on to have not only a great NFL career, but then he became a sports writer, then became a lawyer. So lots to talk about with this former Redskins tight end and Pro Bowler Gene Fugett. But first, Mark, this little piggy.
Yeah, that's right. They always say that a dog is man's best friend, but the pig may give it a run for its money. So they're doing a 5-year grant at the University of California at San Diego, and they're running pigs on treadmills. They want to assess the value of jogging to healthy human beings, and as well as like people that are on post-cardiac cases and stuff like that. So they're testing these pigs, doing all this stuff to them, and going, why are they testing these pigs? Why not dogs, okay? Because dogs can get on a treadmill. Well, they said, pigs are more like people than any animal. Okay, just in terms of the proportion of their body weight, um, just just the way that their eating habits, are more alike. So when someone says you eat like a pig, well, that's actually true. Um, so that's why they're using pigs to do all these testing, which I've never realized.
No, me either.
So if someone slaps you and calls you a pig, say, "Well, thank you."
So it's actually not a negative that
I
No,
guess
when I
not.
was
no,
at
they're
Hurricane Harbor this past weekend, there were a lot of people that were quite big. So I just should have said that.
yeah. Look at
That's
all
right.
the piggies.
Look
Exactly.
at that. I'm not cutting you down. Pigs and people are so similar.
Well, in this issue, maybe we should call them hogs.
Yeah,
There
true.
you
That's very
go.
good. Exactly. So we'll stay with the theme of the Redskins.
Bill, what do you got?
Well, this is something Mark knows a lot about, and Scott, you may know a little bit about this as well. But this is just a week before. Now, remember, this is a week before the nude beach day in Cape Cod. Nudists suffered a legal defeat.
No.
Yes. Yeah. Can you believe it? A federal appeals court upheld a ban on skinny dipping and nude sunbathing at Cape Cod National Seashore.
Oh,
Scott owns a place out on the Cape. I'm not gonna put two and two together. Either way, they ruled that the freedoms protected by the Constitution do not include the right to bathe in the nude. Now, this was back in 1976. Nowadays, as we all know, we're one click away from seeing anything you want. And hey, Scott, Mark, hold on,
Uh-huh.
stop. Don't bring
Uh-huh.
in the Constitution stuff, which I know Mark's just about ready to quote. I know
Here,
it
here.
guarantees Americans the right to bear arms, but it doesn't say anything about bearing the rest of you. And Scott, have you been to the Cape Cod National Seashore?
oh yeah, many times. But I will tell you this, and I think you guys have seen this as well. Speaking of pigs,
Mhm.
nude beaches is not a place you ever want to go to.
No, it's never the hotties.
It is
It's
always,
usually some overweight dude
yeah. And they're
Well,
like, you know,
that wants to talk.
they're old and it's just not good. It's not good at all. As a kid, you're like, yes, New Beach would be great. Amanda and I were walking down a beach in New York. This maybe 5 or 10 years ago, and I'm looking down there, and I'm like, "Is that? Oh my God!" And yeah, this little colony, and I'm like, "Turn around! This is not good. Not good at all."
It's
well,
it is
I
true.
was
It's always an older man.
Yeah.
I was in the south of France 30 years ago, and they're known for their topless beaches. You have to have something on the bottom, but the topless beach is very popular there. And there were some old men, but there were a lot of not old men there
Oh
too.
no,
But it's more accepted there.
Yeah.
south south of France is where you want to be if you're at a nude beach. That's for sure.
Yes,
That's
that's
right.
where the hotties are. There's a nude beach in St. Thomas, and unfortunately, I got caught in a current on a kayak.
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry, you would think Jaws was chasing me as much as my hands were in the water. That little look on their face. It's like, come on, why? I think one guy waved, like, come on over. I'm thinking, no,
Help!
no, exactly. Shark!
It's time for they said it.
They said it, Mark. Bob Newhart, one of my all-time favorites.
Yep. Bob Newhart loved his shows, loved such a dry wit, as a comedian. He's remembering his high school football days, and he said, wasn't very good. So when I went into the line on a fake, so I'm assuming he was a running back, I would holler, "I don't have it! I don't have it!" Kind of takes
I
away
like
from
that.
the decoy, but okay.
Yeah, yeah. He's as they're lining up, he's shaking his head like they're not giving it to me. They're not.
Don't go my way.
Don't fall for this. Let's get into the issue. First up, begging for a miracle with the 1976 divisional races looking lopsided. Pittsburgh is 14 games back of the Phillies. LA 13 back of the Reds. The A's 10 back of the Royals. Baltimore 9 back of the Yankees. So there aren't going to be any great comebacks, or at least it doesn't appear as if there's going to be. You can always get those 51 Giants or some of those other teams that did make a run, But Bill, this was a tough time for those Pirates and Pittsburgh's Willie Stargell in particular.
Yeah, I think they said one of the reasons, I'll get to it in a sec, but Willie Stargell was having a rough year, and this is part of the reason they said. So it's one night early in the season. Willie Stargell and his wife Dolores, they're just watching television when she complained of a severe headache. After the pain grew worse, Stargell rushed her to the hospital where she nearly died of a combination of a blood clot, an aneurysm, and a stroke.
Oh,
And incredibly enough and wonderfully enough, Miss Stargell made a complete recovery, at least from the aneurysm, stroke, and blood clot, not from the marriage. Her and Stargell got divorced in '83.
Wow. Not now. I have a headache. That was probably
Exactly. But Stargell only had like 65 RBI back in 1976. He obviously in 79 came back and had a great year, and I think in 78 as well. But people, said the reason that he had a down year because he was so worried about his wife, which he should be,
yeah.
or should have been.
So the We Are Family did not go to his wife.
Not for yes, no, not 4 years later. They
Yeah,
changed that song.
yeah.
We aren't family. We aren't family. I'm divorced, you and me. I think that's how it went.
The Dodgers suffered a costly sweep at the hands of the first place Reds. Steve Garvey and Don Sutton pushed back against putting too much weight on any single series, but that division's basically over. Bill, your Angels in 1995 had one of the big collapses, and that's what this issue is talking about. Some of these huge comebacks, not going to happen for any of these teams here in 76, but 31 years later, how do you still reflect back on that 95 season for the Angels?
Well, I stopped watching the baseball season after August 2nd. So as far as I know, the Angels had a 13-game lead over the Seattle Mariners. That's how it ended to me. But no, that didn't happen. Mariners ended up catching the Angels in coming back after August 3rd. They caught the Angels, had a one-game playoff. Incredibly enough, the Angels were unable to beat Randy Johnson, and they lost the division. Great season for the Mariners. Not that great for the Angels after August 3rd. Only 13 games back. Angels had a 13-game lead on the Mariners at that time. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning.
Yeah, no, you did. Yeah, that was a great Mariners team. They were just starting to put it together, and apparently they started putting it together right in August.
Yes, and I still remember Randy Johnson's complete game. Angels had no shot. Not saying any other team in baseball would have either.
Yeah.
But it's just, hey man, that happens, and that's not the first time the Angels have blown leads before.
Well, I mean, last year the Guardians were way behind the Tigers in the AL Central. I think I would say 13 and a half, 14 and a half games back and rallied. And 1951 is the most famous case where the Dodgers had a 13 and a half game lead on the Giants on August 11th and ended up losing that one game playoff. Bobby Thompson's the shot heard around the world. And my personal recollection in 69, the year after I moved from Chicago to LA, I came back to Chicago that summer for a wedding. And the Cubs were the toast of the town. They were dominating. They had a 9.5 game lead, on August 13th over the Mets, and they blew it. And that was the year of the Miracle Mets. So it happens.
Yeah, can happen.
Can I mention one more, Scott?
Yeah.
2011, I think we all remember the St. Louis Cardinals. They were 10.5 games out of a wild card spot on August 25th. They eventually got that wild card, then beat the Phillies in the division series, the Brewers to win the pennant, and then in an incredible World Series, beat the Rangers in 7 games and won the World Series. That was the David Freese one.
One of the things that the wild card has done, there was nothing better than that one game playoff to decide the division back in the day. And it meant, you either won the division and you're going to the playoffs or you were going home. I mean, everything was riding on that. They have that now. Or did in the wild. They don't even have that in the wild card anymore. But
isn't it 5 games now?
Yeah. But that one game playoff back to make the playoffs was high drama for sure.
And it puts baseball on the forefront on every channel, on everyone's mind.
He takes his very dry, if you please. There's many a slip for one known for lip, as Dwight Stones learned in Montreal's rain, but 4 days later, he was the toast of the town with a world record in Philadelphia. That's right, Bill. He sets a world record in the trials leading up to the Olympics, and then we have Dwight Stones on, and he recollects about how the weather just really threw him off. It was a pouring rain, and he struggles to get a bronze. Very disappointing. He'll be the first to tell you that. But man, a week later, he proves that he still is the best high jumper in the world.
Yeah, it's amazing when there's no weather and rain to get in the way. He jumped 7.7 1/4. That raised his world record. I think he had done 7.7. Adding a quarter to that seems like easy. Oh, come on, that's not much. Yeah, it's quite a bit for a high jumper.
You know what I love is the picture they have of him in this issue, and you see him like his back is perfectly like aligned, just going over the bar. You can see the scoreboard in the background saying Stone's first try at men's world record, and then his legs are still underneath the bar as he's ready to get that off. But I was just thinking, you know how when you sleep at night sometimes you have a vivid dream and your body moves and stuff like that because like you're falling or something. I wonder if Dwight Stone's, when he dreams, he's dreaming he's doing one of these. I wish I had asked him.
That'd been a great question.
Yeah. You're doing one of these like high jumps. Does your body just like start like going backwards and your legs kick out?
Oh, I'm sure.
I was just thinking though, when Mark was saying that, Dwight Stones, I know we've done a lot of great interviews, but that was Dwight Stones we talked about. He was absolutely at the top of his game back in the 70s. And sometimes when I think of the guest wheel, I go, yeah, just Dwight Stones. Man, that's phenomenal what he was able to do.
Yeah, and once again, when you look back through the prism of history, now we kind of mock and joke that we don't know who the best high jumper in the world is now. And that's just because track and field is not what it was or what now as it was then. But back then, you knew Dwight Stones and Frank Shorter and Marty LaQuarrie and Houston McTerr. You knew these people. They were a part of the sports fabric, much more so than they are today. And two of those guys back in the day, Bill, that we knew, despite never really having that Olympic success, were Steve Williams and Houston McTerr. And we knew all about them, but they just couldn't be healthy when it mattered most.
That's right. It just, the article says, it said, Steve Williams, Houston McTerr showed that had U.S. coaches entered them in Montreal, they would not have been factors. And when you think about it, Steve Williams and Houston McTerr, two of the fastest men on earth at that time, but they were always injury prone, unfortunately. So McTerr aggravates a thigh injury in the trials on the second of two false starts. After that, he gets hurt and he withdraws. And then Williams felt a little pop in his right hamstring muscle, and he had to retire from the event. It's just unfortunate. But back to your thing about Dwight Stones. Dwight Stones was also a personality. So we knew him because he was the sort of, I don't want to say first, one of the first, at least in track and field, that spoke a lot and spoke up. So you sort of knew him whether you liked him or not, but you knew who he was. But back to the two guys, it's just unfortunate with Williams and McTerr, especially because we had an article on Williams that talked about how dominant he is, but he just can't get past the injury bug.
Nope. Yeah, these poor guys. I mean, we know way more about Steve Williams and Houston McTerr than you ever would about guys like that today. But imagine this. This is right after the Olympics. They've already got to be so disappointed that they didn't even make the Olympic team, and now the injuries continue. Will the payoff mean a playoff? Let's get to our cover issue. The Washington Redskins, George Allen, cornered the free agent market, signing Calvin Hill and John Riggins. After a disappointing 1975 season, George Allen was out spending money left and right, trying to get his team back to the playoffs. Calvin Hill was great early in his career, never quite find that success again once he left Dallas, Bill.
No, he was only, he's on the cover, but he only spent 2 years in Washington and totally had 558 yards, one receiving touchdown and one rushing touchdown, which I thought was weird because the only time he scored from rushing was against Dallas in the final game of the 1976 season. And he had so many amazing years with Dallas that Mark already knows about.
Yep.
And Mark, he really had a great collegiate career to start things off.
Oh, yeah. He played football at Yale. So he's a smart dude, okay? And one of the great moments in 1968. This is the most famous Harvard-Yale game of all time. In fact, Yale was a heavy favorite. Both teams were undefeated, but Yale was a heavy favorite. And the headline reads, Harvard beats Yale 29-29. And you go, wait, how did they beat them if it ended in a tie? That's because Yale was up 29-13 with under a minute to go in the game and lost. I mean, not lost in the sense of the headline. They scored 2 touchdowns. They got 2 two-point conversions in the last, say, 42 seconds of the game to force the tie. Wow. But it was probably the most famous Ivy League football game ever played. And one of the players on the Harvard team became I'll give you a hint. He became a very well-known actor, still acting today. How do I give this away? This one clue you might know. He had a roommate who became a very famous politician. Don't know if that gives it away or not. Maybe if I told you who the politician
Bob
is.
Dole.
No. Al Gore.
That's what I meant. Al Gore. Yes.
So who is the actor?
It's Tommy Lee Jones.
There you go. Tommy Lee Jones played in that game too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Beyond football, several Redskins showed depth off the field, including Gene Fugett, who worked as a Washington Post news reporter and had journalism ambitions after he was done with the game. He wasn't done yet. He signed this season as a free agent. He would go on to have a Pro Bowl season in 1977 here in Washington. Loved playing for both the Cowboys and the Redskins. And then when his playing days were over, no, he didn't go into journalism. He became a lawyer. So Gene Fugett had quite a career. He had 3 careers.
Somehow, I guess you did the background. I got drafted on the 13th round. And
Yep.
Somehow I made it through the first week. So the first day of veteran camp, I'm circling the goalposts. And Cornell Green, the great all-pro safety cornerback that never played college football, he whose brother is Pumpsy Green, by the way. He calls me and said, Fugett, I know what you're trying to do. You're not going to find any shade out here. And sure enough, it was 100 degrees and I'm circling the goalposts. And I was so excited. Don't forget, that year, I was the youngest rookie in the National Football League. So here I am, 20 years old. I'm so excited. And I said, Green, why let that water boy sit on the helmet? Damn, Fugett, that ain't no water boy. That's Dwayne Thomas, and he's on strike. And he told that to a guy who 2 years later would be described as the Black Panther on the Dallas Cowboys. In 1974, I was the only Cowboy picketing. And when I asked a teammate, he said, Gene, you could get a job. 8 guys came out with me and 6 went to the beach.
Yeah.
So Tom Landry walked by, shook his head. Dicker walked by, cussed me out. I mean, it was crazy.
Right.
I called Gene Upshaw, and the next day it was Gene Fugett and the Oakland Raiders picking the Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
The year I started in the Super Bowl, I made $20,000 for 20 games.
Right.
Damn.
Yeah.
Paid more in playoff money because I played out my option. It wasn't my option; it was their option. And I was one of the first free agents. And they hassled me all year. It was like being in a Vietnamese prison camp.
I gotta say that the last text I got from Gene on Tuesday was, "I will entertain you."
Yes. that is for sure.
Mission accomplished. So let me, before we go any further, let me just say, as our audience must know by now, Gene has joined us, and he heard the starting gun and just took off from the line, and there's no stopping him. But I do want to say, yes, he was the youngest player in the NFL at just 20 years old when he was drafted in the 13th round. A tight end who played for both the Cowboys and the Redskins, made a Pro Bowl in Washington, all while working nights toward a law degree, moonlighting as a reporter for the Washington Post. He'd go on to run the largest black-owned company in America. I don't need to welcome him because we're well past that. But Gene, hey, thanks for coming on with us today. My goodness. And then I don't even need to ask a question. Go ahead, Gene.
Well, I just appreciate you guys thinking about an old guy. And I've lost two brothers, and I'm told I'm around because I still have work to do. And it's to share the fortune that I've had and to be able to witness history. You know, I came into the NFL in 1972, and it was just going from a man-to-man slugging league to a touch football league. It was really the rules had really begun to change, and there was a difference in the way the game was played. But back then, there was different systems, and the start in Dallas was so incredible because, you know, as you know, Tom Landry was the defensive coordinator in 1958 when the Colts and the New York Football Giants played that championship sudden death game. And being in Baltimore, you know, that game is burned, you know, into our memories when Johnny Unitas led that great drive that won the game. But that sealed the feud between Tom Landry and Vince Lombardi, who was the offensive coordinator. Jim Ray Howell, the head coach, called a timeout and said, "What do we do?" And Landry said, "We punt. The defense will hold them and we'll win with a field goal. It's 4th down." Lombardi said, "We go for it." Well, they didn't go for it. And when Lombardi called timeout in the Iceberg game, he said, "I was right then and I'm right now. Let's go, goddamn it." And boy, they said the hair on the back of their neck stood up. Dave Robinson tells the story. I mean, I was ready to run in. He just heard that story. I mean, the Cowboys didn't have a chance, although Jethro Pugh, my teammate later, told me they cheated because they dug in. But I just wanted to give you some background on the ice game and my good fortune to play with the man who invented the multiple offense. In 1972, we could run anybody's offense in the NFL. We could run pistol, shotgun, blue, red, brown, yellow. I mean, we could run anything. Formations, motions. We're going in motions. We're doing counter motions. We were so far ahead. Do you remember when the Cowboys would come to the line of scrimmage and everybody would stand up and go down?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know why that was?
I always thought it was to draw people off sides, but
camouflage. Just imagine we're playing against the Ravens and Ray Lewis. We come out in an I formation. He's been practicing and studying us all week. So he's going to list the top 4 plays because football's so repetitive. These are the 4 plays they run from this formation. So Gene, watch out for this. Tom, watch out for that. Joe, watch out for that. And he does that really quick. And then we go up and down, and now we're not in I anymore. We're in red, and the ball snapped, and they're playing against the I, and we're running red. And we did that on every play. So that forced defenses to have to play a basic defense against us. And I was so lucky to be there after they had won the championship and the last game. And little did I know that later I would be playing for the Redskins. But I was lucky because George Allen was the only coach who would have given me the opportunity. And that's when I reunited with one of my childhood heroes, a guy named Calvin Hill. Calvin Hill was born in Baltimore, Maryland. And Calvin was also an Olympic level Olympian track man in terms of the long jump and the triple jump. And he may still hold those records at Yale. So he was a 2-port star. And his quarterback was a guy named Brian Dowling, who would be our teammate later with the Redskins as a backup quarterback. But he's more famously known as BD in the Doonesbury comic.
Right.
And that was the team that, what's his name? Gary Trudeau at Yale during that time. And Calvin, he was just an unbelievable athlete, drafted on the first round, rookie of the year, all-pro many years, first 1,000-yard rusher for the Cowboys, multi-seasons as a 1,000-yard rusher. And he was from Baltimore again. I mean, when somebody is near you and does something great, you kind of feel like, well, maybe I won't be that great, but
right.
After my rookie year for 3 months, I was the only rookie on the Dallas Cowboys, the only tight end, Ditka have retired and become a coach. Truax have retired. And believe me, every woman in Dallas knew I was the only tight end on the Dallas Cowboys. So I had 3 months of glory until the draft came along and the Cowboys' first pick, tight end. No, Billy Joe. And I knew that was the end of my Dallas, that was it.
What's really interesting is that you and Calvin play for both the Cowboys and the Redskins, and those are bitter rivals. They hate each other. What was it like to be on both sides of the fence?
It was something. I mean, I played in 17 Cowboy Redskin games, and every game I can remember, every game was special. Tex Schramm was the secret commissioner. He gave Pete Rozelle his first job in pro football as a scout for the Los Angeles Rams when Tex Schramm was the vice president of the Rams. Prior to being with the Rams, Tex Schramm was a vice president with CBS. Might have hired you guys as producers. So he goes to the Rams, and then perfect pick for the Cowboys, a new franchise team. And he knew right away that what would make the team valuable would be the number of people who watched it. I played before 80 million people in Super Bowl 10, and Gil Brandt writing me said that I was more popular than Frank Sinatra. I should have said, pay me like Frank, right?
Right. Yes.
No, and no, it was fascinating. So look, I didn't make the Pro Bowl after that Super Bowl, but half my team did, and it was in New Orleans. So I got a brand new Porsche, and the guy said I had to break it in. I go to New Orleans, and I get a call in my room from Washington, D.C., from Benjamin Bradley's office saying that they heard I wanted to be a reporter. Would I be interested in working for the Washington Post? And that's how I got there. When my ego subsided, I asked him, did the Redskins put you up to this? And he just laughed. And then years later, Don Graham would invite me to the ceremony they had announcing the sale to Jeff Bezos. And it was in the original press room. I'm in Bernstein, Ignatius, of Washington Post reporters, in addition to Len Downey, Ben Bradley. And my son asked Ben, who was with Sally Quinn that day, and he has a recording, and he admitted that the Redskins put him up to hiring me, and that's how I got to Washington. So that year, as free agents, George Allen signed me, Calvin Hill, and John Riggins.
Yep. That was a pretty good
and end of lecture.
Pretty good class there, for sure.
Yes. Gene, let me ask, going back to Calvin Hill for a second. You obviously played with him with Dallas, and then you played with him at Washington. He was two different players in each location. What did you notice about him from when he was with the Cowboys to when he was with the Redskins?
Well, Tom Landry, again, ran a multiple offense, and he knew how to put Calvin in position where he could use his best abilities. So there are different types of running backs in the National Football League. They got the little small, quick guys. They got fullback guys. They got like a throwback because he was a combination. I mean, it's hard. He had characteristics of Walter Payton, but he wasn't as fast as Payton. But he was bigger. He was a lot like he was a lot like the running back for the Ravens. What's his name? King Henry.
Derrick Henry.
Right. Now, if you see the kind of plays that Derrick Henry runs, he doesn't run like a lot of traps or plays where you got to hit the hole fast or influence plays. Most of them are just straight out power plays, off tackle or sweeps. And those are the kind of plays Calvin ran. But if you didn't run that offense, say you're trying to run a 49er offense or whatever, he would be less successful. I mean, people are mad at certain players. Oh, they were horrible last year. And then they're horrible and mad at a wide receiver at Baltimore. And I got to remind people that he wasn't calling the plays. Inside the 20, I could have scored every time. Cornell Green taught me how to run a post corner. He said he was sick of me coming out of my break, stepping on his feet. And he said he was going to get hurt. He fake it to the post and come out. And every time I turn around, I bump right into him, man. I mean, he would always be waiting for me to come out on my break. I'd be so mad. So finally, he showed me how to do that, and it became a money route. I mean, I had to go 2 steps further. And if the quarterback didn't have enough time, it wasn't my fault. Because I got to Washington and jump for a pass, and Charlie Taylor looked at me like I was crazy. He said, "Didn't they teach you in Dallas that interception is a quarterback statistic?" So Calvin's style of play, Dwayne Thomas's, just so you can remember, when you think of him in a toss GT with the guard and tackle pulling, with him getting out, being big and strong and fast. And once you get out there in the secondary and the guy's full speed, he's hard to tackle. So that play was designed with the tight end blocking down on the defensive end and everybody curling around and becoming a convoy for the running back to lead going down the sideline.
Gene, what was the difference? You go from Tom Landry, who you said was this innovator, but also kind of a dictator, if you will, and a strict disciplinarian. What was the difference going from Tom Landry to George Allen?
Well, I wrote about that in a long piece for the Washington Post after I signed, and the headlines proclaimed "From a cog in a machine to one of 46, a team that cannot lose." Landry emphasized the system, but if you would, philosophy. You know, in Asia, they believe that each person is a factory. And each person, that's the way they look at manufacturing, so that each person is an element of the factory and is in fact a factory itself. And they can create, improve, and modify and make the whole system better and make it more cohesive. Where for Tom, they weren't. They were just interchangeable parts. And we're going to run this system, and I'm going to find the players that do, not necessarily modify the system for the players. So George was a player's coach. I mean, George gave out awards every Monday night. And when I won the TV, I mean, it was such a big award to be the player of the week. Now, you know, that's clearly illegal. I mean, he traded draft picks he didn't have. I mean, he's from the adage, if you weren't cheating, you're not trying. I mean, he was a master motivator. One year, I wasn't in the best shape, and I had come back from surgery. So he said, "Gene, I bet I could beat you in a mile. So look, I'm going to give you a week to get in shape, and then we're going to race." And the coach says, "If I win, we're going to practice an extra day on Sunday. And if you win, we'll be off on Saturday." So what happens, of course, every day my teammates are on me like, "Come on, Gene, you know, come on." So when it came to the end of the week when it's supposed to be the race, I'm all nervous and shit. We get up there, and George said, "That's all right. Well, let's just take 2 days off." And everybody just cheered.
I spent a day with George Allen. I remember he had to have the socks would be one color and the other sock on the other foot would be another color. He would like not pay attention to what he was wearing, but man, he knew football. Do you feel blessed that you were able to learn from guys like Landry and Allen in your life?
Well, if I had got drafted by any other team, I would not have made the team because of my age and my inability to play. Although I was a good athlete, all-around athlete, and Dallas had proven that they could take a guy like Cornell Green who had never played football and, in fact, teach them how to play football. So I think they probably looked at me in the same way. And Bob Hayes, who was another person who adopted me, would brag that the reason I made the team is because I learned the playbook in 2 days, which was true. So I knew the plays, and I could take plays in and out. So my whole rookie season, I played second down to Mike Dick. I took plays in and out. And to help Staubach up when he's concussed.
Gene, what was your relationship like with Ditka? What was your relationship like with him?
Well, it was a great relationship until he became a coach. He helped me out. So he offered to give me some clothes when he had lost weight. He was showing me stuff. He told me that I had to be more aggressive. Try to get your helmet up underneath his chin and come up and try to knock him out. And I said, "Damn, Mike, that might piss the linebacker off." And he said, "God damn it, Fugett, that's the idea." See, and that's how he came up. They don't play the game like that now. See, during the 70s, they were trying to cut that out. I mean, Lyle Zeta would beat the hell out of you all the way back to the huddle. And the referees would say, come on, Lyle, stop it. Lyle, stop. They wouldn't even call a penalty. When you ran a deep pass pattern against the Raiders, you had to be like a gunslinger leaving the bar where you go out with your hands on your guns. You could not turn your back because they would smack you right in the back of the helmet. And that's how the game was because the refereeing was loose and lax, and the NFL finally got a hold of that. But it was a much different game then. And as the game started to change, the coaches had to change, and the players, of course, had to change as well.
You just mentioned, Gene, about that Ditka was good as a player. How did he treat you as a coach? Why was he more difficult with you as a coach?
Well, I don't know how he got the job, frankly, because he had never coached before. And if you heard Drew Pearson's Hall of Fame speech, he had to overcome having Mike Ditka as his wide receiver coach his rookie year, which was not fair. I had Ray Renfro. There were 3 ways I could run a down and out. I could run a speed burst, I could run a weave, or I could run a post and then back out. There were 3 different ways to run one pattern. Okay, I didn't know how to do that at Amherst. Run it down and out, you just run and turn out. But now he's teaching me angles in 3 different ways. Well, Mike Ditka didn't know how to teach that. He had ever taught him that. So how is he going to teach Drew that? But they hired him because what? They had drafted Billy Joe Dupree. And they were mad at me because I wouldn't come at 6 in the morning and practice with him. Yeah, I'm a teacher guy to take my job. I mean, I'm a teammate and everything, but damn, I mean, and that was 1973. Before we had to strike, and then 75, I got a chance to play, and we were the first wild card team to go to the Super Bowl.
That's right. And that year, Tom Landry installed the shotgun at the beginning of the year, which had not been used in years. What was it like when Landry came up and said, hey, we're going to run the shotgun formation in 75?
Shotgun in 72. That was not the first time that he ran that. The only reason that he had stopped running it because Craig Morton was not a shotgun. So anytime Morton played, he was always under the center. So Staubach got hurt and Morton was in there. But soon as Roger got in there, he set up the shotgun because Roger needed time to read the defense. Morton was much football wide out of Berkeley. I mean, Morton was unbelievable. I really liked playing with Craig. And he was really smart. And he knew where to throw the ball, blah, 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 blah. Roger was more instinctive where he would take one key. And as he got later in his career, he would play while he was concussed. So I would bring the play in, and I'll never forget there were times when Ralph Neely would say, okay, on 3. I mean, Roger couldn't even give the snap count. The ball would get snapped. And how many times in your memory of Roger Staubach do you see him dropping back, stopping, and then taking off on a quarterback draw? He forgot the play. Happened a lot.
So, Gene, let me ask you, you attended George Washington University Law School at night while still playing in the NFL. How did you physically and mentally manage that workload?
Well, they were structured in that you were taking 4 courses, and there was 1 2-hour lecture a week on each course. So you go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which really fell in line with the football season. And they were evening classes starting at 6 and going to like 7:40 or 7:50. So I would drive from Dulles Airport down to George Washington, which is right next to the Secretary of State's office, and in Foggy Bottom, and attend class. And I must admit, I must have slept through some of the classes, but I was able to pass. I had to drop a semester because of knee surgery. Edward Bennett Williams asked me to go have surgery, and I couldn't continue going to class. So that's why it took 4.5 years as opposed to 4 years.
Well, let me ask, Gene, you played with a guy that had a real fun reputation. Tell me what it was like to play with John Riggins. What kind of player, what kind of guy was he?
Well, he was a great player, no question about that. Everybody knows that, but he's also a great man, and he was a real leader. And I'm sorry that I missed the best years when they went to the Super Bowl, but I saw the foundation and then he left, and then he was bored, broke, and came back. So the first year, it was really great to play with him, block for him, be a teammate. But I just was with him on the field. He had a dog, like a Chihuahua, that would come and eat my shoes. I remember that. So we had a lot of fun. Him every day. He was so. A lot of people were mercurial, high and low, and affected by everything. Nothing really affected him. I mean, he was always on the same speed. And I can't say that about myself. I'll be up and down. Oh, God damn it, you see that? Oh, okay, all right. But he was just so smooth and so determined. And you would never think he was that fast. Oh, my gosh, he was fast. He was fast. So he was a great teammate, needless to say.
You also, in Washington, you talked about Kilmer a little bit, but there was a guy behind him in Joe Theismann. Did you know he was going to be special?
Well, there was no question that he was going to be the next quarterback of the Washington Redskins because, I mean, his ego would demand it. And he had to be behind not just Billy, but Billy and Sonny. And to be able to handle that, not one, but two legends. I mean, Sonny, Hall of Fame, no question, legend. Billy only getting there when Sonny can't make it. And Billy's running a single wing, he's running a shotgun, and then he gets in a car accident and he will never walk again, and then he'll never run again, and then he'll never play again, and then there he is. I caught his last touchdown pass, but he taught me so much, about football and about didn't really matter if you were the fastest or the tallest. It mattered how smart you were and how smart you played, and the toughness just went along with it. And for me to be able to play with a Roger Staubach, to play with a Bob Hayes, to play with a Rayfield Wright, to play with a Calvin Hill, and to see how they do it. Mike Dicker, Hall of Fame tight end. Come on, look how. Well, and then to go to Washington, I got Riggins, Calvin, Billy Kilmer, and Joe Theismann.
Hey, so your life is like a movie. I mean, the things you've accomplished in your life is just crazy. Is there one thing that you're most proud of? Maybe one thing that's football related and one thing that's not football related that you're most proud of?
Oh man, that's really a really tough question. I went to high school when I was 12, and I was in the top 10 of the Catholic entrance exam. And my mother, who the cardinal knew, got a call and asked me to go to a new school to integrate it. So here I am at 12, representing my race. 4 years later, I was the first Black Catholic athlete of the year. A year later, I was a freshman at Amherst College participating in a student takeover where we locked the guard out and took over the administration building because we wanted Black studies. It was a Eurocentric, the classes were all Eurocentric. So on my 50th reunion, I was able to go back and say that I was grateful because there were three possible outcomes. I could have gone to jail, I could have gotten thrown out of school, but I got Black studies. And that's our family's legacy. We're a family of educators and attorneys. And I'm just trying to fulfill that legacy and to teach the many people about the possibilities that the accomplishments of me and my brother represent. And that's exhibited in an exhibit at the museum called the Reginald F. Lewis Museum of African American History and Culture here in Baltimore, of which I'm on the board. And but when you think about, but if you know your history, it's nothing like your ancestors were challenged. Mm-hmm. I mean, you weren't crammed into a boat and had to sit up and have somebody on top of you and defecating on you for the whole trip and had to survive that. So when you start to think about that, when Tom Landry had me run in place and I was ready to quit one day and I looked to my right and the sun glistened off the gold tooth in Herb Adderley's mouth because he was smiling. It was like he was loving the pain. And he looked at me and he said, Fugett, Vince Lombardi didn't break me. to help Tom Landry will. And man, when he said that, my mind snapped and I could have get back up. I could have can do because I went all the way back to the plantation and I was not going to be broken.
Wow, you can see the emotion still, we're talking almost 50, 60 years later, Gene, how those days affected you.
It was real. It was life and it was coming at me fast. And I was just trying to be the best person I could be, help as many people. So many people helped me. I mean, so many people. I got to Dallas, and these guys doing Rayfield Wright. I mean, taught me how to block. Bob Hayes protected me. I mean, Calvin. All my life, I've just been so fortunate to have great mentors. I had a great teacher in college, Professor Asa Davis, and my mom and dad. Come on. I mean, they were unbelievable. And then when Reg went to college, I was the man of the house because mom and dad were either asleep or working. I mean, we were a working family and we had pride and we were going to take every opportunity that God gave us, and we did.
Do you remember an old game show called To Tell the Truth, where they had three people all claiming to be the same one? There were two people that were lying. There was one that was the actual person. Okay. True or false? Tom Landry once appeared on To Tell the Truth.
True.
You are correct. He was a fake guest. And this was back in the late 50s. So he identified himself as Tom Landry, assistant coach, New York Football Giants, before his Dallas days.
Let me give you a trivia question.
Okay.
1968. I'm a high school senior
Okay.
in Baltimore, Memorial Stadium. Last game of the year, it was Colts and Redskins.
Okay.
I run out on the field trying to get a souvenir, and I get the souvenir from the rookie running back who would be rookie of the year. And years later, we were teammates, and he's in the Hall of Fame. Who named that player?
Oh my God. He was on the Colts or the
Redskins, rookie running back.
Oh my God. Rookie running back Charlie Taylor?
Yeah, good guess.
Good job, Mark.
Way
Good
to go,
guess.
Mark.
Charlie tells the best story. He tells the best story I've ever heard. That he's at Arizona State. Frank Cush is just cussing at everybody. And this guy jumps up and says, "Sorry, coach, I got to go to a baseball game." And the coach cussed him out and said, "Damn it, don't ever come back." And that was Reggie Jackson.
Oh, that is good. That is good.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah, Charlie, he was a great, great man.
Hey, Gene, you mentioned that the front office of the Redskins and Ben Bradley at the Washington Post played a role in recruiting you to the Redskins, partially because of your media interests. And then you get there and you're playing football and you're a journalist at the same time. What was it like reporting for the Post and working at CBS while still an active NFL player?
Well, it was good for them, and it was good for me. You can just ask Len Shapiro who his locker room source was, and they were getting great information. My first year, I worked in the news department and covered a county bureau, and then the FCC forced the Washington Post News Corp to divest of their stations, so they had to swap stations with stations in Detroit. So as a result, I left the newspaper, and they asked me before that happened, would you go work for Washington News Post at Channel 9? So James Brown at CBS took my place when I left.
Oh, wow.
I was the first black sports anchor in the history of Washington, D.C., and I did that for a couple of all seasons. And then the Newsweek went to Detroit, and the new people, Warner had just left, Warner Wolf. So a new guy was coming in, Glenn was coming in, and I wanted to go back to the news anyway. So then I finished up at the Post my final year before I retired.
When you mention people like Calvin Hill and Charlie Taylor and Herb Adderley and Craig Morton and all these guys that you went to battle with back in the day, How much do you miss the guys?
Well, there's nothing like that locker room and and being in a pro locker room. There's nothing like it because every day is a challenge, both in the locker room mentally because of all the personalities that are being on display, and then going to later have to perform in some aspect every day. You had to perform, you had to go out and run the plays, you had to do whatever. So just by being on that kind of time, that's always interesting, but you're also glad when it's over.
Gene Fugett, everybody. Pro Bowl tight end, 13th round draft pick, had no right making it in the NFL for as long as he did, but he knew something about hard work and intelligence paying off and made a career in the NFL and then as a journalist and then as a lawyer and as a businessman and you name it. You're an impressive person, Gene. Thank you so much. Appreciate getting the chance to meet you today.
Well, thank you, Scott, Bill, and Mark.
Thank you, Gene.
Love you guys. Appreciate you taking the time and listening. Let me know when we can get back together.
Would love it. Rookie cards of baseball, basketball, and football stars are iconic pieces of American history, and they have been outstanding investments over the last 50 years. Now, key issues of Sports Illustrated, professionally graded and encapsulated by CGC, have emerged as an exciting alternative to trading cards. ThePit.com is the leading online exchange for investment-grade sports magazines. General Manager Mark Humphreys offers Sports Illustrated first cover editions featuring stars like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Derek Jeter, Ken Griffey Jr., and so many more. Calvin Hill on the cover of the August 16th, 1976 issue as he tries to revitalize his NFL career in Washington. And here to tell us if this issue holds any value 50 years later is Mark Humphreys, an expert in the field of collectibles and the CEO of ThePit.com.
Well, this Calvin Hill cover holds very little value, and that's because the Redskins' greatest hopes went completely unfulfilled, at least in terms of postseason. Hill was a terrific running back with the Cowboys from 1971 to 1974. During those 4 years, he never averaged less than 4.2 yards per carry. Then he had the year with the World Football League with the Hawaiians. I don't know how he did there, but I guess he did well enough that the Redskins wanted to bring him back and pay him a fair amount of money to run for them for their shopping for a Super Bowl, as the cover says. Unfortunately, over the next 4 years, 2 of which were with Washington before he went on to the Browns, he averaged no more than 3.8 yards per carry each of those 4 years. So he had lost about half a yard and apparently a half a step or so. And he was no longer an effective running back. In fact, he wasn't even a starter for the Redskins. So it really is an interesting cover story that they would highlight this. It appears, without having read the story, that Sports Illustrated just completely missed out on trying to figure out how Calvin Hill would fit into the Redskins picture for 1976, because he was basically a backup running back once the season started. The Redskins did not win the Super Bowl. They didn't, in their one postseason game, Calvin Hill had 4 yards. I think that was all on receptions. He didn't even have a rushing attempt. And the Redskins would have to wait until a running back named John Riggins brought them a Super Bowl in January of 1983 at the Rose Bowl, in fact, close to where I was living at the time. So I wasn't surprised to see that there has not been a single one of these issues graded by CGC, the magazine grading company. And there's just very little interest in this magazine because it represents a failed premise and does not warm any Redskins or Commanders fans' hearts, as far as I can tell.
Only ThePit.com offers competitive buy now and sell now quotes on graded magazines online, as well as many of the most popular modern PSA graded rookie cards, including Shohei Ohtani, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Nikola Jokic, and Steph Curry. Trade sports stars like stocks at thepit.com. Shake 'em out of the coconut trees. The article traces a growing wave of Samoan athletes entering U.S. college and pro football, driven by American Samoa's small but rapidly growing population. Bill, this was just the beginning of a bunch of Samoan players that would end up playing in college and the pros. I loved Mosi Tutupu, was one of my favorites. Who was one of your favorite Samoan players?
Washington State's very own Jack Thompson, the throwing Samoan. I had him on a Sporting News. I just love that name.
Yeah.
Love that name, throwing Samoan. He'd make a whole big deal in the NFL, but he did throw 33 touchdowns over his career. But I just love that name.
Yeah, it was Washington State, right?
Yes. Yep. Washington State's very own.
Mark, you got any that stick out?
Well, a couple of USC guys, Troy Polamalu, who's and probably didn't pronounce that right.
Polamalu, you're good. You're close.
Trojans and
close.
Steelers, and does that commercial for the shampoo.
Yep.
Great
Yep.
hair. And then Junior Seau tragically died too young. But I used to do, I want to say it was 1989, I want to say. Every Monday I used to go out to Heritage Hall and interview Trojans for the Pac-10 feed, Pac-10 feed of the week. So every week the Pac-10 would put out a feed and you could record it at your station. You could get interviews and video and B-roll of, stuff involving the Pac-10 that you could use on your shows, which was great. So I used to do all the USC interviews, and that was a lot of football interviews. So it was Larry Smith, the head coach, Junior Seau, Mark Carrier, who I loved. You got all the USC players there. And then the intern in the SID department, who I strongly believe was Will Ferrell, though I can't prove it. I just remember the tall, thin guy that used to take the players out for me. So
Can I go on? Can I say something on the back of that about Junior Seau?
Sure.
1990, I'm working at Albertsons in Oceanside, and I was working with Junior Seau's cousin. His name was Tony Pow. Tony Pow was the size of 4 houses. Well, I guess I was working too hard there, because one day I was in the back room and I turned around and Tony was standing right above me. And he goes, "Stop doing my work, Bill." I said, I went, "Okay, Tony, I'll just go to the check stand." He was just the nicest guy. But if you've ever talked with a lot of Samoan guys, they don't speak real fast.
Doesn't do anything fast.
No, he just said, "Stop doing my work, Bill." And I said, "Okay, Tony, good. I'm out.
Wow.
He was such a great guy. But I never saw Seau in person, but Tony Pow was as big as the name seems.
Yeah.
As the name sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I know you mentioned Junior and Troy and the throwing Samoan. When I think of Samoans, I think of those nose guards that basically just take up the entire front line.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, he's good at stopping the run. It's like, yeah, because they're basically a roadblock.
Yep. And isn't there been a Tuiasa Sopo in football for the last 80 years?
Right? Yeah.
I mean, there's always, yeah. All these guys are just massive.
Good stuff. Garland in full bloom. Wayne Garland emerged as one of baseball's best pitchers in 1976, posting a 13-2 record and a 2.59 ERA, despite entering the season as an afterthought Orioles reliever. Bill, he had been so bad the year before, the Orioles did the unthinkable.
Yeah, but I hate to use that word bad, because nowadays he'd be an ace. The year before 75, Wayne Garland was 7-11. His ERA was 3.39. But that wasn't good enough in Baltimore, who wanted to cut his $27,000 a year salary by the maximum 20%. Later in the season, because he had such a good year, they restored that. But damn, man, Baltimore, they expect a lot from their pitchers.
I can't recall the last time a guy, I mean, even if you go to arbitration, the guy could hit, 191 with 7 home runs
Yes.
and
Jeff
31,
Mathis.
right, and go to arbitration, and the team will offer him a small raise, and the player will want a large raise, but he's getting a raise,
Yes.
you know? So,
And yeah, but I'm saying, Scott, how many teams would take 7-11, 3-3-9 from a starter right now?
oh yeah, for sure. So we mentioned that Baltimore's 9 games back of the Yankees and is not going to catch them. Wayne Garland gets in there and just takes complete advantage of the opportunity. But despite his league leading record, he's snubbed from the All-Star team, a decision he accepted quietly. He's just been a kind of journeyman up to this point, has this breakout season, doesn't get rewarded for it. Unlike his teammate Jim Palmer, who was also left off and publicly called manager Daryl Johnson of the Red Sox, who was in charge of the decision, called him an idiot. So Palmer was not as accepting. I think also back then, I mean, being an all-star and all that kind of stuff, that really helps your contract negotiations and stuff. So,
but also Palmer had said that in the article, it said, talking about Garland, Palmer goes, he's got some of the best stuff in baseball. Then that's Reggie Jackson, and Reggie goes, his stuff's not that good at all.
And Reggie was his teammate.
Yeah, exactly. Good point.
Thanks,
Good point.
Reggie.
Kind of hard on him.
Right.
I mean, the thing for me is like, he won 55 games in his entire career, Wayne Garland, and 20 of them came in that 1976 season.
Yeah.
So.
And he parlayed that into a nice deal with the Indians.
He sure did. That was back when the first beginnings of free agency. I remember he was one of the first ones to kind of get a good contract. And so then, the eyes of the baseball world were on Wayne Garland in Cleveland for a few years, and everyone was like, uh-oh, he's
he did average 5 wins a year over the next 5 years.
Yeah, so, what are they looking for?
Yeah. Hey, those 5 wins only got, didn't get us out of last place, but damn it, we'd be farther back if we didn't have them.
Bad week, as we mentioned, for the Dodgers. Their pennant hopes collapsed further after getting swept by the Reds. Raleigh Eastwick said of the Dodgers, they should have a funeral before the body decomposes. So I think Cincinnati's feeling pretty good about their chances to repeat as NL West division champions. Mark, time for
Mark Fidrich.
It's time for our weekly Mark Fidrich report. So what was the Bird up to this week? Well, he gets a win, which is pretty exciting. He beats Cleveland 6-1. It's his first win in 3 weeks. He had lost his last 2 games. But he said, I feel so good, I'm getting a little cocky, the Bird said afterwards. Or as Sports Illustrated phrased it, the Bird crowed.
So what's his record now, Mark?
Well, he would remember he starts 9-1.
No, I get that. But what's his record now after not getting a win in like 3 weeks?
Oh God, I don't.
Oh, for the love of God, man!
He finishes 19-9. So I want you to think about this. That means he won 10-8 the rest of the year. Okay.
This is unbelievable.
What a loser!
I had one question.
Right.
Well, you know what? The team's second to last in the division. Okay. All right. He was 13-4. How's that?
There you go. That's good.
Go prove me wrong.
He would have been 16-4 if they would have scored some runs for him.
Exactly.
My dad used to always say to me back in the day, he'd ask about some pitcher for the A's named Gorman Heimuller, and I'm like, oh, he's good. He hasn't lost in his last 4 games and blah, blah, blah. My dad would be like, you could just be making all this stuff up. I'd have no idea. Now you can go back and look. But back then, so Mark, just go with it. 13-4.
Yeah, it sounds good.
It sounds
but
good
the
to
thing
me.
is, Scott, as a kid, you knew those stats. And you were proud of knowing those stats, so you would never make it up.
Right now, I feel like you both are a bunch of jackasses.
Well, that's a perfect segue, isn't it?
Oh, wow. That's a coincidence.
Mark is very excited to tell us the difference between a jackass and a mule, which was for some reason an article here in Sports Illustrated 50 years ago.
Well, yeah, it's this competition with mules, and they want to tell people that mules are not jackasses unless they're extremely rude to you. So this is the difference. A jackass is an adult male donkey, okay? A mule is a hybrid of a male donkey and a female horse. All right? So that's
Oh,
the
that's
difference.
twisted.
A jackass is all ass. A mule is
Right?
hard ass.
That-
Yeah, that's right.
that's like the Seinfeld, right? The
Stop
roosters
talking
with
about
the
the birds.
chicken. Who's with the hen? Right? When Jerry Stiller,
Exactly.
that's perverse.
They're all, exactly.
Beneficiaries in the will. We'll talk a little pro basketball, and we talked with Sven Nader a month or so ago about the merger between the ABA and the NBA, but now it's actually happening. For the second time in NBA history, a dispersal draft is taking place, and some of the teams are really benefiting from this, including the Chicago Bulls. They get five-time ABA All-Star Artis Gilmore. So, I mean, talk about just improving your team immensely. All of a sudden, this guy falls into your lap. And Portland, they're doing okay too, right, Bill?
Yeah, they got Maurice Lucas, and then they ended up trading for the fifth pick and got Moses Malone. But
Wow.
Moses Malone never played a game for Portland because they traded him to the Braves for first round pick Rick Roby, who didn't play much with Portland. He would later in his career get traded by the Celtics to the Suns for Dennis Johnson. So Rick Roby was actually traded for two Hall of Famers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dang.
And then Portland with that number 3 pick, I think, traded it again, ended up getting the
Yes.
number 1 pick, which ended up being Michael Thompson. But I mean, all these guys, Michael Thompson, Rick Roby, both had fine NBA careers. Could you imagine if they had kept Moses Malone?
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. My God, they wouldn't have drafted that to Sambua years later.
Yeah.
But Artis Gilmore is the one that's dear to my heart because the first time I
That fro.
saw Artis Gilmore was when he played at the University of Jacksonville, and they were the surprise team of the NCAA tournament. In 1970, they made it all the way to the championship game where they played the UCLA Bruins.
Yep.
And they got an early lead, but they ended up losing by 11 to UCLA. And that was my first taste of Artis Gilmore. And then I remember him in the ABA with the Kentucky Colonels and then going to the Bulls. And then he went to my Spurs for 5 seasons in the mid 80s.
Now, this is the second dispersal draft. The first one was in 1950. And Bill, that basically changed the course of the history of the NBA.
It did. One thing great about looking back at these magazines is there's little snippets of history that they don't talk a lot about, but they are quite amazing. In that first dispersal draft, the Boston Celtics, the NBA put all these names into a hat, and Boston got Bob Cousy.
Wow.
I never knew that he was picked up in the dispersal draft.
And the rest, they say?
Yeah,
All
is
right.
history.
Yeah.
Bob Cousy's still with us.
97, I think.
Not with us, but
Yeah.
he's still alive.
Yes.
Bob,
Oh, he's with me right here.
It could be with Mark.
Bob here.
Yeah.
Bob's
Mark
right
and
over
Bob
here,
are on
Bob.
a beach on the Cape right now.
I got Bob Newhart and Bob Cousy here. Right with me.
stretch they come.
Still a grand old game. In the first of a 3-part pilgrimage, the author of Boys of Summer finds baseball retains all its charm, whether playing in suburbia in the Ozarks or at Chavez Ravine. This is by Roger Kahn, whom is probably the best known baseball writer in terms of book form of all time. Everyone loved Roger Kahn back in the day, and he talks a lot of great insight here, Bill, including some stuff from Wally Moon, a former MLB Rookie of the Year for the Dodgers, who also kind of changed the course of history.
Yeah, Wally Moon once roomed with Sandy Koufax. This is a young Sandy Koufax, and he told him he was tipping his pitches, which changed the way that Koufax pitched, and I think he actually became pretty good after that.
Yeah. Yeah, he was
I mean,
okay. He went from
it's
a
all right.
he went from a journeyman guy who couldn't throw strikes to winning the pitching triple crown at least once or
Thank you, Wally.
yes, nice work.
You know, when I think of Boys of Summer, I don't think of this book. I think of the Don Henley song, you know?
Yeah.
Nobody on the road, nobody on the beach. I feel it in the air. The summer's out of reach.
Yep.
First four lines from that song. I don't think he was talking about baseball there, though.
He might have been, who knows, right? Dusty Baker had an interesting take on the difference between playing in Atlanta and LA. What was it?
He said in Atlanta, you hope to win. Back being a Dodger, it's expected. And that's almost exactly what they're like today.
Yeah, you know, other than those Frank McCourt years,
yes,
the Dodgers have been a pretty formidable franchise for about 60 years now.
Well, putting on that uniform's historical.
Yeah.
And guys just for whatever reason could go there and they just seem to play better.
And yet, Mark, the Dodgers coming to LA, we kind of take that for granted now that they left Brooklyn and came to LA, but that was never a done deal or a sure thing.
Well, you know, I think the LA had to convince the Giants to come with them. They needed to have two teams. They wanted to have a rivalry. So the fact that they could get the Giants and the Dodgers to both come to the West Coast was key. And then they had the whole problem, you know, Chavez Ravine, which is, you know, they kicked all those people out to build the stadium.
That's right.
The piece closes with a stark contrast. The financially disastrous Houston Astros, mired in over $30 million of debt under owner Roy Hofheinz, versus the thriving family-run Dodgers. And one of the most fascinating pieces is in the article, it talks about the origin of AstroTurf, which the judge, Roy Hofheinz, business instincts put together. See, what was happening was the Astrodrome's translucent roof created a glare that was making balls impossible for outfielders to track fly balls. So he turned the fix into profit when this Monsanto agricultural and chemical company quoted him $375,000 to install synthetic turf. He replied that was exactly what he intended to charge them for the promotional rights. And so AstroTurf went in for free, named after the stadium. So that's how we got the word AstroTurf. It started from Din Man, who was a guest of ours and a MLB executive's grandfather. And that certainly helped the Astros. And for years, you know, they played in that Astrodome with the AstroTurf. So great stuff. Lots of good things in this article. I'm sure the next couple weeks we'll have more from Roger Kahn's book.
You ready, dear? For the record.
Let's move on. For the record, shall we? Mark, this is one of those guys that I don't recall really seeing him play that much, but I have a feeling that Gail Goodrich was a much better ball player than I ever thought he was.
Oh, yes, Gail was. And the story in the magazine is that the New Orleans Jazz are signing him. He's, you know, been in the league for 11 years, 19 and a half points. But, I mean, his most famous days were with the Lakers and stuff like that. He came from UCLA, led UCLA to their first two national championships, and then went to the Lakers, played 3 seasons there, then went to the Suns. And I remember he was on the Suns team that almost upset the Lakers in the playoffs that year. Then he went back to the Lakers and then ended his career in the Jazz. But such an underrated player, and you know, star on Wooden's first 2 championship teams, and then very, very good NBA career.
Wasn't also the trade of Goodrich that helped the Lakers get Magic Johnson? Wasn't it his trade? They got the number 1, then they had to do the coin flip.
No, Bill, you're absolutely correct. It says joined the Jazz as a veteran free agent, triggering a compensation agreement with the Lakers that inadvertently handed LA the draft pick they used to select Magic Johnson.
Yeah.
Oh my God, is that the bonehead move? A bonehead move?
Yeah.
Right. Because the Lakers were to receive a compensation pick for losing a veteran free agent, and they agreed to send New Orleans first round pick from '79, along with first round picks in '77 and '78, and an additional second round pick. And then in '78, '79, they finished with the worst record in the league. the Lakers were eligible for one of the top two picks. Oh my
Is it,
God.
I think
That,
Goodrich's jersey still retired at stay at the crypto.
yeah, number 25. It's
Yeah.
retired. Five-time All-Star. But oh my God.
Hey, Bill, what about we've talked about this guy a few times, Carlos Monzon. Wow.
You're right. He was sentenced to 18 months in jail for beating up a photographer in 1967. Yes, we said that right. We're talking about an article in 76, but he beat up a photographer in 1967. So what they did is it was a delayed legal process regarding this assault. And while he appealed, Monzon could continue his boxing career. But finally, the appeal came up. They turned it down, and he got 18 months in jail. It seems odd that they have to wait 10 years to get that appeal heard, but I guess they did. And Carlos Monzon went on to have a little more violent behavior.
Yeah, he ended up shoving his girlfriend off of a balcony to her death and would end up dying in prison. So,
yeah, on a furlough, coming back to prison on a furlough, he died in a car wreck.
Right.
A crazy world, man.
87 wins, 3 losses, 9 draws in his career. So he was unbelievable inside the ring and a little bit questionable outside of it. I have one. Tina Bischoff, 17, Columbus, Ohio, swam the English Channel from Dover, England to Cap Gris, France. 9 hours, 3 minutes, 33 minutes better than the women's record set by Lynn Cox of the United States.
Oh, there's a familiar name.
1973. And, we talk a lot about past guests and stuff. Some just stand out more, and maybe it's because I had never heard of Lynn Cox.
Yeah.
But her show that we did with her
she was great.
Unbelievable. Just you can't even imagine. She swims
the
these
Cold War stuff alone.
Not to mention
bringing countries together,
swimming in these temperatures in the high 30s without a wetsuit.
Yep.
It was crazy, just crazy.
Real people, real stories. Faces in the crowd.
So my faces in the crowd is Rick Armentrout from Minnesota. They said he's the new golf coach at the University of Minnesota, but he had played there. But it's the reason I'm picking him out is not because of his last name, because anytime I see the name Armentrout, I think of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, because Jonathan Banks' character was Mike Armentrout, the enforcer. So this guy might have been an enforcer on the golf course. He played very well at the University of Minnesota. And took the amateur title in '72. But they say he's the new golf coach. But when I look in the history of the University of Minnesota, I just see him refer to him as a player. So I don't know. Need to call someone.
No faces in the crowd for you this week, Billy. But what about a 19th hole?
Yeah, I've got it. It's a small bore, but not boring. It's unbelievably Howard Mack from University Heights, Ohio. He writes Kenny Moore's article on the small bore 3-position Olympic rifle event was the most enjoyable. We never see the sport on TV, but the competition between Lanny Basham and Margaret Murdoch was as close and as exciting as that in any other Olympic event. To me, this uncommercialized sport where men and women compete equally is what the Olympics should be all about.
Nice.
It was a good article, and it was an amazing man.
Here.
Yeah, a guy who wins silver in 1972 and thought it was because of his not necessarily a mental mistake, but he just wasn't mentally prepared to be a champion. And so he went to go figure out how to. I'm talking about Lanny Basham. And he ended up starting a whole way of thinking on how to be a champion. I think his book's called Winning in Mind. What about Nadia Comaneci? She's on the cover 2 weeks ago, Mark.
Well, Kathy Boren from Virginia Beach, Virginia says, why is there now so much interest in gymnastics? Because of Olga Korbut, while Nadia Comaneci may be a perfect gymnast technically, she lacks the glow, the exuberance that Olga adds to the art. And gymnastics is an art. I would not want to look at many paintings that were technically perfect but lacked expression. So a big Olga fan thinks Olga's getting the short shrift.
Yeah. She wants, like someone to fall. That's as imperfect as it gets.
Yes.
Well, Jeremy Taylor, he's not a fan either. He writes from New York City, "You sure disappointed me. I expected all those other non-sports magazines to put that little girl on the cover and ABC to splash her all over primetime when they'd hit a big female audience. But you, those old Greeks must be revolving in their graves, turning handsprings into an Olympic sport. Phooey." So he thinks that these little girls are doing cartwheels. I think what they're doing is simply unbelievable and one of the most incredible athletic and accomplishments that the human body can do. So there's always room for disagreement here on the 19th hole.
I miss that word "fooey."
Kung Fu.
That's just a fun word. I say, "fooey." They don't say that anymore.
Hong Kong Phooey.
That's
They
right.
use more
Yeah.
expression, more expressive.
Another
words.
another show that really carries well to today.
Oh,
Yes, for
Oh,
sure.
my God.
For sure. Hey, that's going to wrap it up for this week's 8/16/76 look back at the Sports Illustrated with Calvin Hill on the cover. Want to thank a teammate of his, Gene Fugett, for coming on and talking about that time in DC, the Hogs, the Redskins, the Commanders, whatever you want to call it, the Washington football team. Gene Fugett knew every bit about playing there and living there and being a part of that. So thank him. For Bill, for Mark, hey guys, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Yeah, don't do it silently.
Goodbye.
We'll see you next week, guys. We're past our prime.